Hey everybody, it's Tyler Esselman.
And Michael Osinski.
And you are listening to This One Goes to 11.
This One Goes to 11. It's the podcast where Tyler and I invite someone to share an album with us that they believe is perfect.
So parfait, Monsieur Michael, that 10 out of 10 just isn't good enough.
No, seulement 11. Pas de 10 ici. No. Don't you throw French at me. I will throw it
French
back at you.
Michael Osinski, everybody. That's that minor in French. He's flexing it. Like a tattoo.
Major. I have a degree
in
French. Yeah.
Ah, shut up. I forgot about that.
Yeah, that was the safe major that I held on to make my parents feel like everything was going to be okay. So
that was your backup.
Yeah,
that was
French,
your backup to theater.
French was my backup major. So there you go.
The poor saps we were. You know, that's funny. We should be talking about languages because today's guest is one of the most linguistically flexible people I've ever met in my entire life. His powers of linguisticism really are formidable. Michael, can you tell our listeners who we're talking to today?
We're talking to Nate Simpson.
People, you know this one's been a long time coming if you know me. And that is because Nate Simpson is a dear friend. Nate Simpson is an actor and filmmaker, regrettably based in Los Angeles, California for the time being. His debut feature film, Stephanie Stevens, will have its premiere at the Idlewild Cinema Fest, March 7th, 2025. He's 32, but who knows? Maybe he'll make it someday if he keeps trying really hard. Nate, that's one of our best bios yet.
Oh, I thought you were coming up with that on the spot. I was going to chide you for all the editorialism that you included in that.
Yeah, I was. That
wasn't very professional, Tyler.
That was very unprofessional. Yeah, well, I'm trying to keep the professionalism to a minimum with you being here today, buddy.
I regret to say, je ne parle pas le français.
Well,
oh no,
you knew a little bit.
Just enough to sound good when I say that I don't speak French.
You have a great accent.
You have a great mustache.
And you have a great face that I would like to kiss.
Okay, let's.
All right. You can snog after we're done recording, boys.
We will. Come on. Nate, thank you so much for joining us today. We're really stoked to finally have you on, dude.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm so honored to finally, I'm so honored to be included in this great undertaking of artistic exploration.
I think it's finally. I think it's been a long time coming. Like I said, you're somebody whose opinions on music I greatly respect. Always have, always will, and also somebody who I know is going to speak their heart very very clearly about what matters to them in all realms of life. So, with that, why don't you tell our listeners what album hath thou brought before the This One Goes to 11 tribunal today?
An album that I am frankly flabbergasted has not been featured on this podcast before. Today we were speaking about Pink Floyd's flagship seminal album, The Dark Side of the Moon.
Fun fact, actually, I had never listened to Pink Floyd's The Dark Side of the Moon until this past September.
Right, which is why, as a Philistine, you should never have been made a host of this podcast.
That's true. It's an injustice that has yet to be righted.
Well, here we are today to right that wrong.
Exactly. It was cool, though. I will say, I saw a show at the Adler Planetarium with friend of the pod Gilbert Tanner. That was it was a very, very cool thing, like all space shit, and to the set to the music of Dark Side of the Moon. I was duly impressed.
It is very cool. There's one thing right out the gate that I'd like to address, and it's this album's relationship with psychedelia. Like, people like to do lots and lots of drugs and listen to this album, and I think that's a poverty of spirit, in my opinion, because this album stands on its own as a musical piece, and it needs no augmentation, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I get the visuals of the planets and the planetarium or whatever, but this thing is a very human journey to be gone on, and it should be done just with you and your mind and your open ears.
There is sort of a weird, we'll get into it more, but there is sort of a weird thing. The fact that so many laser light shows are set to the Dark Side of the Moon when the content of the Dark Side of the Moon is actually very like, I don't know, sort of Joseph Campbell hero's journey, epic, what it means to be human situation. But let's wait before we get too into the weeds here, because before you make your case, Nate, we have a little segment we like to call, Tyler.
It's called The Beginner's Guide to Pink Floyd's The Dark Side of the Moon in 60 seconds.
I'm doing it this week, Nate. So you get to evaluate my little 60-second hoo-ha here. Hoo-ha?
Hoo-ha could work. We could say hoo-ha. Yeah, absolutely.
You don't need to set the 60 seconds, Nate.
I got the 60 seconds. I appreciate you being ready, though.
I'm going to set the 60 seconds.
Okay, I think Nate's keeping time today then. So he's got 60 seconds left. How do you feel about this one, Michael? Do you feel prepared for this?
Yeah, I'm prepared. I'm going to have to kind of, again, it's another motor mouth one, but I think I can do it. So
okay. So Nate, you're going to be judging Michael's job in any terms you see fit. Just before you get started building your case for the perfection of this album. Sound good?
Okay, Michael, I will be judging you on your verbal athleticism. 3, 2, 1, and.
Psychedelic prog rock forerunners Pink Floyd got their start in London when architecture students Nick Mason, Richard Wright, and Roger Waters joined forces with Waters' childhood friend Syd Barrett. Their 1967 debut, Piper at the Gates of Dawn, was the only album spearheaded by Barrett, who was ousted from the band over his excessive use of LSD and his crippling mental health issues. 7 years and 7 albums later, with David Gilmour on guitar, they released The Dark Side of the Moon, the 4th best-selling album of all time. It was created as a concept album about life's most fundamental pressures and other, quote, things that make people mad, as well as about their former band member and what happens when the creative individual loses the ability to function in the modern world. It featured much shorter songs than their usual fare and lots of experimentation with tape loops, multi-track recording, and concrete sounds, including recordings of conversations with their road crew. The band would continue to experiment and deliver epic tomes like 1979's rock opera The Wall, a chronicle of the life of fictional rock star Pink, and a satire on fascism. And their legendary status was cemented in 1996 with their induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Shine on, you crazy diamonds.
Hey, dang.
Right under the wire. Under the wire. Olympic scorecard, I'm going to give you an 8.8 because as I said, verbal athleticism, I did hear 1 or 2 slips, but overall, really nice performance. And I got to say, information dense, and you came in right under the wire. So photo finish on that one.
Great. Yeah. So it's established that you are the Russian judge, is what we are establishing.
That's correct. Today I'm the Bulgarian judge, but Eastern Bloc, okay. Yes.
Okay. Wait, are you actually Bulgarian?
No, God. No.
Oh, I don't know. I was like, maybe you are.
No, he's Scots Irish.
Oh, you're all on the island. Okay.
Yeah. Look at my pink face. Well, no, I mean, I'm more if you like took a red crayon and drew a circle around Northern Europe.
Yeah.
And just scribbled a lot inside of there. That's what.
Okay.
Big same. Except for the Italian that I have in me. But anyway, I digress.
Well, Nate, thank you for the 8.8. It rhymes, Nate. 8. In any case, before we dive deeper into the album, we like to get things started a little more broad-based, a little more general. We like to ask all of our guests what their relationship is with music, past and present. So what's yours?
Well, music is an incessant and indelible part of my life. It is something that I engage with ceaselessly every single day. I am constantly finding new music, diving into it, like finding weird rabbit holes of music to dig into. I myself started playing music when I was like 5 or 6 years old. I was a cellist for over 10 years. I was in all the symphony orchestras available to me. I taught myself guitar from the age 13 to now. I still play guitar basically every day. I have been in many different music groups, specifically. I think the best one that I was ever a part of was the Youth Symphony of Kansas City. Got to be second chair cellist in that. Played some of the most iconic pieces of the Western canon, and I was literally deciding when I went to college between going to music school and acting school, because I'd gotten into both of them. And my decision came down to the fact that going to music school entails that you would lock yourself in a room for 8 hours a day and be alone practicing. And I thought that sounded terrible. So I decided to go. Acting school, on the other hand, entails playing around with your friends all day long and making jokes and having fun. So I went and I did I went and pursued the useless arts degree where you have fun rather than lock yourself in a room. You know what I mean?
Same there. Yeah. Who was first chair in the Kansas City Youth Symphony? First chair cello.
God damn. I'm sorry. This is your access.
It's a good thing you don't remember, to be honest with you, because that means you have no bitterness really towards that person.
What was his name?
All I remember is
I felt deeply that he didn't deserve it and that I did.
Oh, really? Okay. Good. I'm glad there was some drama there.
Who did he know? Did he know someone?
Who did he exactly? Yeah, he was a nepo baby. He was a youth symphony cellist nepo baby, and that's why he got the.
They're the worst.
I can always tell in that program From the Top. You ever listen to that one on NPR? With the kids playing classical music?
No.
It's really cool, actually. But I always feel like, man, who's Silicon Valley dad is getting their kids to play piano on NPR. That seems about what those kids do, as much as they are really talented.
I have to chide you for your cynicism here, Tyler.
I don't trust
those kids earned the part.
They did. Yeah. That's true.
Also, we shouldn't be knocking NPR right now. We should all be funding NPR. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, not to get political. Artistic children, Tyler. Shame on you.
Artistic children, yeah. Well, when Stevie is a savant harpsichord player, I will know that she's gone about it in all the right ways.
Listeners, Stevie is my daughter. She is named after Stevie Nicks, and her harpsichord lessons have started.
She could. It was her second word after apricot was harpsichord.
She's 1.5 years old, and I'm beating her with a stick until she can get those Bach fugues down.
Oh God.
Okay, so let's hear about the other music that was going on in the house. So you clearly had a big classical influence early on. And what were your parents playing for you?
So that was my own experience with music. Music was always playing in the house. There was always jazz playing. There was always new age music playing. My dad, I think my awakening when it comes to my own exploration of music started when I must have been 5 or 6. I couldn't have been very old at all, but it started when my mom was out of the house. I remember she was gone, and it was just me and my dad. For some reason, my younger brother and she were gone. My dad pulled out his box set of Led Zeppelin, and he had a really nice stereo system. And so he put on Led Zeppelin 2, and he cranked it all the way up so that the whole house was like shaking.
Yeah.
And he played Led Zeppelin 2 for me, specifically Whole Lotta Love. And I remember that specific moment, like shocking me awake in terms of musical consciousness, just like feeling for the very first time that your like body could be like shaken and electrified by music. Yeah. And specifically being introduced to like electrified rock and roll from the latter half of the 20th century, just blowing my head off. Robert Plant's vocals, Jimmy Page's guitar, the whole thing, John Bonham, fucking John Paul Jones, blowing my face off. That I remember started my obsession with like trying to find music. Because before then I was aware of music, obviously, like I knew that it existed and what it was. Like, what was I listening to that before that? Like Head, Shoulders, Knees, and Toes. You know what I mean?
The basics, the building blocks.
The wheels on the bus.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was interested in like, there's a whole world of adult music out there. And then from that came my desire to play the cello, my desire to like play instruments and to find music on my own. My tastes were definitely influenced a lot by my dad, who would, of course, because he was a kid in the 1970s. So he showed me, hard rock from the 1970s.
Right.
And so I remember, again, not to get too ahead of myself, but The Dark Side of the Moon was one of the first albums when I was coming online as a preteen teenager that I discovered on my own, that he didn't show me, or that I didn't have somebody else show me. I found it. I had heard of it, and I went out and found it, and I listened to it.
Oh, really?
And that's part of why it was so important to me. Classic rock, classical music, jazz, all kinds of different things. Remember specifically the album Roundabout. No, what's the name of the album by Yes?
By Yes?
Oh, it might be called Roundabout.
Is it Roundabout? That I know that's
I don't know.
the single on that album, but
That's the single. Yeah,
That's a great fucking song, too.
yeah, it's a whole album. Yeah, when I started teaching myself how to play guitar, I taught myself how to play "Mood for a Day," which is the flamenco track on that song, and it got me interested in like learning how to like really be good at guitar.
Hell yeah! It says it's from Fragile, the 4th studio album.
Fragile, yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. Sorry, listeners.
Listeners, forgive him. He's got a lot going through his head. We're in the midst of some fires. Okay,
yeah, exactly.
We can allow some scatteredness.
In fact, how dare you for judging me, listeners?
Don't you dare! Not my boy. That's my boy right there. So this is also on brand for kind of where I would see your musical tastes by the time we met as freshmen in college. I feel like this thing about incessantness, this thing about like constant music, constant like a kind of always, like, slow drip of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that something that your parents, were they playing music a lot, just like in the background, like while they cooked and that kind of things, like, or was it more like sitting down and like giving you an experience with a record like your dad did there?
Well, no, it was not. It was very much always playing. And so
Cool.
Music was just like part of the landscape. But now, what's interesting is that my parents listened to a lot of like new age music, like instrumental music.
Yeah.
There's this whole musical collective called Windham Hill that was always playing at my house. It was like very interesting instrumental guitar pieces and piano pieces by various artists. And I just recently realized that, so my parents were both doctors, and they had 2 young sons. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the time that music was playing on there were channels above channels if you had a certain cable package that were like music channels.
Yeah, I remember.
If you got into the 300s or whatever.
Hell yeah.
So they were always on that like instrumental channel, and they would play it in the morning. And I used to think that was just because they loved like instrumental music, but now I'm realizing it's very like calming stuff. And I think it's because they were like on high alert all the time. So they needed to calm themselves down.
Right.
But it's funny because that music has become a very important part of my emotional landscape. And I listen to it all the time too. Stuff like Alex Degrassi and Michael Hedges and Philip Auberg and Liz Story and stuff like that.
And there's a new agey album that has become canon for me that you shared with me.
Which was?
It's the Rocks and song. What was it? Rocks and Waves.
Oh, Rocks and Waves. Yeah, that's crazy. That's
Rocks
crazy.
and Waves song circle. It's like it's this song cycle with a group of people, and it sounds so much like what if for all of you people who went to theater school out there, like Nate and Michael and I did, that you.
A vanishingly small audience, but
right, we're very niche. So there's like this thing of creating a song communally that I feel like we did over and over again in theater settings that is so beautifully expressed in this Rocks and Waves song circle.
Yeah. It is awesome.
It's so good. I'll share a link
creating
to
a
it.
song communally is also something that people just do.
Hey man, listen, I'm not going to knock
this
anybody. It's
not reserved specifically for theater people.
Theater artists. That's a good point. Okay, so you got us there a little bit, talking about how you discovered Dark Side of the Moon, quote unquote, on your own, right? So tell us more about what that discovery was like. It sounds like you went and searched for it. Do you remember where you heard about it? Do you remember who told you about it and spurred on that? Was it a book, a magazine? What was it?
Well, I remember in 2003 they re-released Dark Side of the Moon because it was the 30th anniversary.
Yeah, it went 30th,
and they re-released it in like super surround sound, like super like crazy, like remixed the entire thing from scratch.
Yeah.
And redid the whole album in the way that Alan Parsons always like imagined that it would be done. Quadraphonic, really high quality sound. And so I said there was an advertisement in the back of like Rolling Stone, I believe it was. Mm-hmm. And I saw it, and I had always heard of Pink Floyd, and I had always seen this sort of that iconic like prism refracting light into a rainbow album cover. And so I went to Barnes & Noble. The next time my dad and my mom and I went to Barnes & Noble, I bought the Dark Side of the Moon album. And it was 2003, so I was how old I was, like 11 something like
yeah.
that, 11 or 12.
Mhm.
And I remember going up and just going like, okay, it felt very special to me because it was like, okay, this is my album. And it's
Mhm.
not like I went downstairs and got my dad's album and put it in the CD player. It was like I went upstairs with my little portable CD player and my headphones, and I'd put it in and I listened to it. There was a lot of ownership in that for me because it felt as though it was the very first time that I was going out and exploring things on my own without like having been taught to do it in class or been told to by my friends or been told to by. So I got told to by an advertisement, but ignore that.
Sure.
This was my choice.
Different.
This was my choice. This was not the media's choice. This is my choice.
It feels different when it's like, because in some ways it's coming straight from the artist, an advertisement, right? Like that they're facilitating the marketing of those things.
Yeah.
And so in some ways they're handing it right to you if you discover it from a marketing material that they generated.
So anyway, so that was my entree into the album. And I remember this was the first, again, this is another first for me, the first album that I just would re-listen to incessantly, like obsessively. Like this album became a thing that like, and you'll hear it when you listen to it, which listener, please
do it.
Don't be that guy who just already likes the album, so then clicks and wants the opinion on it. That's already positive, and you know it's positive. Hopefully someone is listening to this who is like, should I listen to that? Please go listen to it. It is a really moving piece of music, and
go be reintroduced to it if you do. Like I think
Right.
I think listening to it with new ears is a very valuable thing.
Yeah,
got to do that.
It's a headphones album too. I mean, I would say it's like either it's a headphones album or it's you're sitting in a room with an incredibly great sound system because and we've talked about this before with some albums. If you're listening to them in the car, it's a bad car album. Because I tried to listen to it in the car, you just don't pick up on some of the subtleties. I mean, like, what is it on the run during that? Like, if you're not listening to it in headphones, you're not hearing all the different sounds that are
also, if you're listening to it in a car, you're probably like stepping hard as hell on the gas pedal.
Well, yeah,
you're probably having an anxiety episode.
Exactly.
No, yes, to your point, Michael. Yes, absolutely. I would say there's background music and there's foreground music, and this is foreground music.
What felt different about it to you from what else, the other things you were listening to at that time?
Pink Floyd has a unique voice. You know, they do belong to the sort of rock progression, and definitely they might have even invented progressive rock in the latter half of the 1960s, early 70s. But there's this strange soulfulness and deep well of feeling underneath both their music and their lyrics that spoke to me in a way that was not like, you know, Led Zeppelin, like sorry, I'm trying not to be obscene. But
you can be
talking about Led Zeppelin's lyrics, but like it was not the typical like rock song like "Let's Have Sex" or whatever, or like there's a girl out there that I saw and now I want to have sex with her.
Right.
Some might call it, and I'd say they'd be wrong, a little bit what's the word I'm looking for?
Like introspective or
No. It's got a lot of depth, but I think some people might look at it and think that this album is
pretentious.
Not even pretentious. I think like dealing with themes, but not going too deeply into the themes. Like just sort of like a pastiche. Some people might think that this
cursory.
album is sort of a cursory pastiche of like human feelings.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that a richer reading of the music itself will find that like there's lots of subtlety and color to this music. This was the first album that made me have a really deep emotional reaction that I would carry with me in my life. There's a lyrics in the song that called me to action in my life. Yeah. You know, it had a greater effect on me. Like the things that they're singing about in this album aren't just like sort of I'm 14 and this is deep. They are really a deep dive into the experience of being a person on the planet. And it was the first album that I ever listened to that deeply affected me in a real way. That wasn't just like a sort of like shallow catharsis, but an actual like call to action.
Yeah.
Which is so rare and so interesting.
Yeah, it's sort of like, I mean, an album that I often compare this to, and it's been a long time since we've dropped our obligatory Radiohead reference here, but like for me, that's what OK Computer was for me. Like listening to that sort of like shattered my world. Yeah. And I mean, they often get compared to Radiohead, and I think for a while I thought there were some similarities there, but like now when I was re-listening to the album, I'm like, maybe, but in some ways I feel like they're operating on different planets, but with similar intentions. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, that's what I would say. If there's a comparison between them and Radiohead, it's a purity of artistic focus. Like they know exactly what they're trying to. They've got a laser focus on what they're trying to get you to understand through their music. And Radiohead is probably the like sort of like Radiohead is interested in like the entropy, like things falling apart, like this sort of ennui of being alive. And I think Pink Floyd is more about the endless adventure into consciousness, like the sort of deeply digging into what the human experience is.
Also, I mean, sort of keep that going. It also feels to me like Radiohead kind of is willing to live within the entropy and figure things out, whereas Pink Floyd is like desperately trying to find order,
structure somehow, which is funny because they we were talking. So Pink Floyd cut tracks like "Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun" and "Echoes" and "Careful with That Axe, Eugene" that devolved into total chaos. One of Pink Floyd's record contracts, I believe it was with EMI, allowed them unlimited studio time in exchange for a reduced rate, right? But what that meant was that they spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours doing these like and extended jam sessions in the actual recording studio that they were able to put to tape. And one of their experiments involved them all going off and recording based on a theme in a certain key with no set tempo and no set like anything. On their own. They would record their part, bass, drums, keys, guitar, and they came back together and mashed it together. Like a chaotic, crazy experiment like that. But what's
so cool,
so interesting about what you said, Michael, is that like through all of this chaos, what they were seeking for was structure. Like how do we use this insane mashing of sound and this new consciousness that we're finding in the latter half of the 20th century, which is blowing apart our structured world that we grew up in the 1940s, 50s. And how do we create music with this brand new mentality, brand new soul that we've all found as modern people, but then make it make sense? And The Dark Side of the Moon there are a lot of records that Pink Floyd cut before this that have a lot of just stuff that's crazy, like like Fever Dream, too much Sudafed type music.
Amen.
So Roger Waters took over. I'm sorry, I'm doing history now.
Yeah. This is great.
I don't know if you've got like a
hard pivot. We got a hard pivot coming, so we're great. Yeah. Don't worry.
Okay, great. This was part of the Roger Waters era of songwriting. He said, "When I want to cut this album, what I'm going to do is be absolutely clear in my lyrics." We've done a lot of like sort of pussyfooting around meaning. We've done a lot of avoiding meaning in our previous work. And what I want to do is have a clarity of focus to the lyrics and make sure that they are saying exactly what we want to say.
Hear, hear.
And there you get The Dark Side of the Moon. If their journey as a band was to find chaos and dive into chaos, and you should know that the original title of this piece of work was The Dark Side of the Moon, a piece for assorted lunatics. This was an exploration. This, at its core, was an exploration of insanity. So, as if Pink Floyd's artistic goal was to find the central core of chaos, they did that by finding a purity of focus.
And when you know a little bit about Syd Barrett too, when you listen to the lyrics on "Brain Damage" towards the end, it kind of that song takes on new meaning, which is an excellent segue into our next question for you, Nate, which is, if you had to pick the standout track off of The Dark Side of the Moon, what did you pick?
Time. The standout track is Time.
Awesome. Dear listeners, if you've never heard Time by Pink Floyd, here's a little snippet.